Hello you guys, welcome back. She Loves God here. Today's video topic is, what is God's attitude towards sin? What is his position? What are his feelings and thoughts towards sin? And many people will say, well, you know, it was different in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, he was merciless with it. You sinned, you died without mercy. If you sinned against the law of Moses. And they say in the New Testament, you know, God overlooked some things. Like when that woman was caught in the act of adultery, normally she would have been stoned to death, but because Jesus, you know, started a new way of doing things, she was forgiven. So people say that is a good indication of how God's attitude towards sin changed. And I think it's important for us to look in the Old Testament for a few examples of how God viewed sin. And one example I want to read to you guys is Deuteronomy 17 verses 11 through 13. And it reads, "According to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgment which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do, thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall shew thee, to the right hand nor to the left. And the man that will do presumptuously, and will not hearken unto the priest that standeth to minister there before the Lord thy God, or unto the judge, even that man shall die. And thou shalt put away the evil from Israel. And all the people shall hear and fear, and do no more presumptuously." So I think it's important for us to look and see what that word presumptuous means. So I have a few definitions here. I'll just read them off randomly. One we have is excessively forward, going beyond what is right or proper, full of, characterized by, or showing presumption or readiness to presume in conduct or thought, overstepping due bounds as a propriety or courtesy, taking liberties. Another definition is too bold or forward, taking too much for granted, showing overconfidence, arrogance, or effrontery, going beyond what is right or proper, rude or arrogant, inconsiderate, disrespectful, or overconfident, especially in doing something when not entitled or qualified to do it. Bold and confident to excess, adventuring without reasonable ground of success. So those are all definitions of this. So when it says, when you sin presumptuously, that means you're just big and bad and bold with it. You know what's wrong to do. It's probably even premeditated. I'm guessing it's probably what some of what presume means. You don't care that you're doing it. You don't really care. So it seems to me that people they're daring, they're bold. You don't know what's wrong, and I'm gonna do it anyway. As soon as if it's intentional and premeditated, you know what's wrong and you do it anyway. So it seems as if God said, for those who sin presumptuously, that man shall die, and shall put away the evil from Israel. This is in the Old Testament, of course. And it says the reason, it seems as if one of the reasons is this: and all the people shall hear. They shall all hear about the punishment that man got, which of course was death. And so it says, and all the people shall hear and fear, and do no more presumptuously. So it seems as if there's an extra weight on presumptuous sins. Now you all may say, Missy, there's no difference. It doesn't tell you whether there's presumptuous sin and a sin that's not presumptuous. Well, that's what Numbers 15 is for. Numbers 15 will tell you that there is a presumptuous type of sin and a sin done out of ignorance. So let me read you a few of those verses from Numbers 15. And this is verse 22. "And if ye have erred and not observed all these commandments which the Lord hath spoken unto Moses," verse 23, "even all that the Lord hath commanded you by the hand of Moses, from the day that the Lord commanded Moses, and henceforward among your generations," verse 24, "then it shall be, if aught be committed by ignorance," aught just, pretty much just means if anything be committed by ignorance, without the knowledge of the congregation, that all the congregation shall offer one bullock for a burnt offering, for a sweet savor unto God. So you're going to offer, you're going to make an offering. Verse 25, "And the priest shall make an atonement for all the congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them." Why? "For it is of ignorance." So because it's done out of ignorance, meaning they didn't know any better, they will have an offering or an atonement made. A sacrifice will be sacrificed for this sin. And it says, a sacrifice made by fire unto the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their ignorance. So it seems as if it's all about ignorance. Verse 26, and it shall be forgiven all the congregation of the children of Israel, and the stranger that sojourneth with them, which means traveleth with them, seeing all the people were in ignorance. That means they didn't know any better. Ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means, lack of knowledge of something. So, if I don't know Russian, I'm not stupid. I just am ignorant of that language. I've never learned that language before. Okay, then verse 27. And if any soul sin through ignorance, then he shall bring a she-goat of the first year for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for the soul that sinneth ignorantly, when he sinneth by ignorance before the Lord, to make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. So it seems as if when you sin out of ignorance, it's a whole different thing. But look at verse 30. But the soul that doeth aught, or doeth anything, I guess, but the soul that doeth aught presumptuously, remember that word presumptuously, whether he be born in the land or a stranger, the same reproacheth the Lord. And that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Because, why? Because he hath despised the word of the Lord, and hath broken his commandments. That soul shall be utterly cut off. His iniquity shall be upon him. It didn't say, let's make a sin offering. It didn't say, let's make an offering by fire. It didn't say, we're going to sacrifice this animal because you did this out of ignorance. It just says that soul shall be utterly cut off. It didn't say, we're going to make so these offerings that appeared were for people who sin out of ignorance. Then maybe there are other chapters in the Old Testament that talk about people giving offerings for presumptuous sins. But as far as this chapter is concerned, if you sin intentionally and boldly and daringly and forwardly, and it wasn't done out of ignorance, your soul would have been utterly cut off. And then he gives us an example. And this example is going to frighten you guys to see how harsh God's attitude towards sin was. Okay, and there it says, verse 32, and while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, this is while they were still in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. Remember, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath day in the Old Testament. And they found him gathering sticks, brought him, and they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron, and unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward, which is in prison, or I guess some type of prison, whatever kind of prison they had, and while walking through the wilderness, I guess, or while in the wilderness. And they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done unto him. And the Lord, you guys, this was what the Lord told Moses to do. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. Everyone in the congregation had to get a stone and stone this dude to death because he picked up sticks. Can you believe that, on a Sabbath day? It was no mercy. It was no, well, he didn't, he was just picking up sticks. He wasn't doing any really hard labor. He picked up sticks on a Sabbath day and had to be stoned to death. Okay? So it says, and they had to stone him without the camp. That means outside of the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him as stones. And he died, as the Lord commanded Moses. I'm telling you guys, God's attitude towards sin was very adverse. He really was against sin. And it says, verse 40, that ye may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. I am the Lord your God. So we see here that God's attitude towards sin was not very favorable at all. It was a very merciless attitude towards sin. I mean, this man picking up sticks, you guys. If you live in the Bible days and you picked up sticks and you knew you weren't supposed to work on the Sabbath day, then you were just good as dead. You're going to be stoned. That hurts. I mean, imagine someone throwing a stone at you. Imagine your wife or your kid stoning you, your own mother stoning you to death. Because he said all the congregation had to get stones and stone him. Okay, so that's Old Testament. Let's move to the New Testament and see if his attitude towards sin has changed. Hebrews chapter 10. Okay, Hebrews chapter 10. Verse 16, this is God. This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. And their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Verse 18. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. Now when I hear the word these, I'm thinking about something right here, right now. When I say those, if I'm pointing towards those little things on my wall, that's those. They're way over there. If I point to just the curtain rod, that's a that. If I pick up this right here, this is a this. If I pick up both of these, that's these. So when it says these, it's talking about these things right here. It says, now where remission of these is. It didn't say those and that. It said where remission of these. So it's talking about specific sins right here, right now. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin because it's already been forgiven. But let's get down to verse 26. And 26 gets a little scary. I mean, I thought just Numbers 15 was scary and Deuteronomy 17, 11 through 13 was scary. But I want you to hear, this is New Testament, you guys, New Testament. Verse 26. For if we sin willfully, which reminds me of presumptuously, for if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins. Now, knowledge, like I told you guys, ignorance does not mean you're stupid or does not mean you're mentally retarded. Ignorance means you just don't know certain information. Like I said, I'm ignorant to whether or not my neighbors have a cat or a dog. I have no idea. I'm not stupid for not knowing that. I'm very ignorant to what they have in that house, to how many pets that they have. So, lack of knowledge is, that is ignorance. So he's saying if you sin willfully after that you have received the knowledge, that means you're no longer ignorant. You have the knowledge. So if we sin willfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins. Remember verse 18 said, now where remission of these is, now where remission of these two things in my hand right here. Now where remission of these is, there is no more sacrifice for sins. But if we sin willfully, it means intentionally. It means I intentionally know how God feels about murder and I go out and murder somebody. If we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins. What does that mean? I wonder, does that mean, I don't know, I'm scared to even think about what that means. Verse 27, but a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. And this is when this writer of Hebrews, we're not sure who the writer of Hebrews is, but this is when the writer of Hebrews refers back to the Old Testament. He says, he that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. That means in the Old Testament, you know, they didn't have video cameras like how we have. They didn't have email proof and pictures and text messages like that we have. So in their time period, if somebody saw you doing a sin, they couldn't, prove it to somebody. They had to just rely on their word. So under the witness, that's what they say the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, that every word be established. So they say he that despised, which means broke, in this case Moses' law, died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. That means if 2 or 3 people said they saw me cheating on my husband, I would die without mercy. Not know, well, did you do this? Well, are you sure? Without mercy. 2 or 3 witnesses, you can get 2 or 3 false witnesses against me, I was good as stoned and dead. So it says, he that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sore punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. For we know him that hath said, vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. So he says, if there was a big deal in the Old Testament, how much sore punishment, if you are a Christian believing in Christ's blood that sanctifies you, and you consider it an unholy thing, and you trod it underfoot, how much sore punishment will you get than those people in the Old Testament that I read you about in Numbers and Deuteronomy? It's a very scary thing. So please think about that. Has his attitude towards sin changed any, or has it gotten even worse? Please leave comments, share this video. Thank you. Bye-bye.